So thank you so much for having me up. I love traveling around and talking to different schools about this topic. So my name is Jen Gorham, and I am the program coordinator with the Fredericton Sexual Assault Center. And part of the work that I do is coming into schools and talking to youth about relationships. Because we know in the province of New Brunswick, 3 out of 5 youth experience some kind of violence in their dating relationships, and that starts as early as grade 7. So that's a really, really high statistic for a really young population. What that means is, mathematically, some of the people in this room have experienced violence in their dating relationships, and statistically, absolutely within this school. But we also know that by talking to youth about relationships, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what's abusive, giving you some information, actually talking to you about relationships, these are ways that you guys can then look at what's going on and assess, yeah, things are really great here, this is good, I'm really happy with how things are going in my relationship. Or you know what, I don't think things are that awesome right here. Or you know what, I think things are actually unsafe and I need to get out of this situation. So being able to assess what's going on can keep you safe. Throughout the presentation, feel free to ask questions if you feel comfortable. If I'm saying something that you're like, that doesn't make sense, or I'm conflicted about that, or I need more information, please feel free to ask questions. You cannot embarrass me, you just cannot. If during the presentation you learn something, you figure something out, you're like, oh my gosh, I am going through something unsafe. I am in a relationship that's unhealthy right now, or I am in an unsafe situation. Just one sec. Then I want to encourage you to get some support. You know, I don't work with the guidance in this school. I work with the guidance in Fredericton. But what I can tell you about guidance counselors is they're not in it for the cash. They're not in it for the money. They're in it because they genuinely care about you. They genuinely want you to be safe and healthy. And so this is a great resource. Talk to a teacher, talk to a friend, talk to a parent, talk to someone that you trust. But don't go through something alone. Get some support. If throughout the presentation, I know that it was mentioned about your cell phones, that I noticed that you're all of a sudden super interested in your crotch, I will assume that you are either surfing the net, or if your face is kind of glowing blue, I will think you have some kind of funky STI, and you should probably go to the emergency room immediately, because nobody's crotch is that interesting. So let's keep our cell phones away. So yes, please ask away, and like I said, if you hear something that's upsetting, or you want to get some support, come and talk. And you can come and talk to me after. I'll hang around a little bit if you have a question. So any questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts, or anything like that? Yes? Well, what do you mean? Like my presentation? It's about sexual assault in relationships, but not necessarily home situations. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. So I need 20 volunteers. Yep. 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 Okay, I gotta see how many we got so far. I always do that, then I can't remember how many I said. Just wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, everybody hold still. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Crap, you moved again. Everybody freeze. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We're good with 14. Okay, get a partner up. And I need you to make 2 lines facing your partner. And I need to be able to walk down the middle. You're doing it, it's amazing, look at you go. Okay, do you have a partner? I need somebody to be this person's partner. Awesome sauce, come on over here. Okay, are you guys all good? You're partnered up? All right, partners. This is Team A. And Team A, you're all getting a lolly. And Team A, you're very excited about this. You're super thinking, yeah. You're like, yeah, I totally need this lolly because corn syrup and artificial flavors are a super important part of a healthy diet. Take 1 lolly. Now, I don't want you to open your lolly. I don't want you to put it in your mouth yet. That's licorice. How do you feel about licorice? That's what I thought. I want you to just hang on to it. Because you guys are, I'll let you swap out in a sec. You guys are super excited about getting this lolly. Team B, you guys think I suck. You guys are like, why did we volunteer for this? This is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever volunteered for ever. I want candy as well. What the heck? So you guys are going to try to get the lolly away from your partner, but whoa, sparkly. You may not physically touch your partner, and you may not grab it out of their hands. You must be creative and use your words. Go. And you want one, come see me. If you have licorice, you may swap it out, but if you don't have licorice, you're stuck with your flavor, go grab a seat. You may eat them now, but you gotta put your wrappers in your pockets. And give it to your friend who's got a pocket. What, taking a lollipop? Oh, I know. Licorice is a controversial flavor. Good, okay, thanks guys. Well done. Round of applause for our volunteers. Some interesting action going on that I've never seen before. Okay, before we talk about why we just did that, let's talk about this. So I need a definition. What is sexual assault? So what does that mean? Yep, way at the back. Can be unwanted touching, but let's say I punch this person right in the face. That's pretty unwanted, and it's touching. Thank you. So unwanted sexual touching. So when we talk about sexual assault, we are talking about touching someone in a sexual way without consent. They have not given permission. Yeah? I don't know how that would translate into a sexual situation, so it would definitely, still be assault. It would still fall under assault, but fair. So, we use the word consent. What does that mean? Yes. Pardon? Who said that? Permission. Someone else said another word? Yes. Yes, what else? Consent means consent. Clever. Yes, so we're talking about consent. We're talking about giving permission. We're talking about saying yes. We're talking about an agreement. And when we're talking about sexual consent, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about saying yes to a sexual activity of some kind. Now the Criminal Code, which is a book of laws in Canada, it's about this thick, and there's one page dedicated to consent, has some rules when you cannot consent. It says these are situations where you cannot give consent or it didn't count. Even if you said the word yes, it doesn't count as consent. So what would some of those times be? Yep. Pardon? When you're drunk? Right. If you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, you cannot give consent. So we're going to pause on that one. Alcohol. So what the Criminal Code says is, if you're really, really, really drunk, or you're really, really, really stoned, you cannot give consent. You cannot say yes to sexual activity. Can you use, I was really, really drunk or stoned, as a defense for committing an assault? No. The same way that you can't say, oh, I was really, really drunk, I didn't know I was drunk driving. Can't use drunkenness as a defense for committing a sexual assault. So there we have a problem then. If you can't say yes when you're really drunk or stoned, but then you can't also use that as a defense for committing an assault, let's say we're all going to, well, dude with the punch in the balls question. What's your name? Tristan. I'm gonna say we. I'm not going. This would be weird. You all are going to Tristan's house for a huge party. I'm not going because that's weird. But you all are. And this is a hypothetical story because I know no one under the age of 19 would ever consume alcohol. So at Tristan's party, everybody is drunk and everybody's trying to get with everybody. It's a hot mess. Who's in charge? Somebody just said Tristan. I don't think it's a very good idea. I don't know this person, but I'm just going to say right now, it's really not a good idea. And here's the thing. The person who's throwing the party isn't in charge, because if that was the case, I'm not having any more parties at my house. I don't want to be walking around my home going, yeah, hi, Phil, yeah, you've had a lot of tequila, so I need you to come with me and put your pants on. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. So not the person who had the party. Who's in charge? Me, Jen Gorm, I just established that I am not coming to your party. Yourself. You are in charge of your own behavior. And here's how this works. How many of you have a license? A good number, that's good. What did you guys have to do to get that license? You took a test. What was on the test? Questions. What were the questions about? Driving about what? Cars. Yes. Thank you, whoever said that, you're a genius. The rules. You had to take a test so that you knew the rules. So let's just say today, when I'm driving home, and this is again a hypothetical story in case any of you have policing members in your family, that I am driving like, I don't know, 140. And I get pulled over by an officer, comes up to my car and is like, yeah. Any idea how fast you were just driving there? I'm like, 110? And the officer's like, no, actually, I clocked you at 142. Do you know the speed limit on this section of highway? And if I'm like, you know what, I don't come up to Woodstock very often, so I don't know. That officer is not gonna be like, oh gosh, ma'am, holy cow, am I ever embarrassed. I never would have pulled you over if I knew that you didn't know the rules of the road. Have a great day, see you later. No, I'm gonna get a ticket because I have an obligation to know the rules of the road. That's the contract that I have with the province of New Brunswick. That's my license. It is the same with sex. If you're the person who's trying to get the sex, you're the person who's trying to initiate the sexual interaction. This is my imaginary sexual person that I'm trying to have sex with. I'm trying to get sex from them. You have the obligation to know if you can get consent from this person. And if this person is highly intoxicated, you're trying to have sex with someone who's highly intoxicated, who's drunk or stoned, you do not have consent. That is just the law. You cannot have sex with drunk people. Your drunk status doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how drunk you are. Also doesn't matter what this person is saying. Even if this person's like, no, baby, it's okay. Doesn't matter. If they are highly intoxicated, you can't have sex with drunk people. Does that make sense? Okay, so another hypothetical story. Matt and I, is my partner, his name's Matt. Sorry to any Matts in the room. Matt's my partner. And let's just say tomorrow night, we decide to get rid of the kids. Not in a murdery kind of fashion, just like, to the babysitters for the night, to my sisters. And we get really, really drunk and engage in like a super messy marital moment. Has a crime occurred? Some people are saying no. But we just established that you cannot give consent when you're drunk or stoned. So some people are saying because I'm married, and some people are saying because I'm in my own home. Well, one, you can have domestic violence in a marriage, right? That is the nature of domestic violence. Violence within a partnership. And part of violence is sexual violence. So it's nothing to do with the fact that we're married. And in your home, sexual assault, here's a stat for you. 67% of sexual assaults occur in a home. So, I'll ask again, has a crime occurred? Yes, technically, letter of the law, That is what is happening. So the next day, when everybody is sober and clear-headed, are the police being phoned? Why? So the answer is no. Why? Because no, not anything to do with not remembering. Yeah. But that is the nature of sexual assault and alcohol, is that yes, a crime has occurred. Yeah.
So when you're with your wife and you're home, the kids are out, you're just chilling, having a glass of wine or a few, and your husband wants to give you the dead day. That's a sexual assault.
That's what I just said. This is what we're trying to unpack. So this is what I'm saying. Letter of the law, you cannot consent when you're drunk. Matt and I were super drunk, getting busy. A crime has occurred. Why is someone not calling the police the next morning? Because we both get in trouble? No. Nope, can't be consent. We wanted it to happen, but that's the nature of not being able to consent under the influence of drugs or alcohol, right? We make decisions we wouldn't normally make. The reality is, in this situation, the reason that there is no one calling the police and filing a complaint the next morning is because we have a healthy relationship. We have a relationship that is built on trust and caring and support, and we communicate and we check in with each other, and it is a healthy relationship. Do you think that if you've met someone at a party and you guys get really, really drunk and hook up, that's enough time to know someone to determine whether or not you have a healthy relationship? Do you think if you're going out with someone for 2 weeks and things are going well and you really like this person and you guys got to drink too much one time, and that's enough time to determine whether or not you have a healthy relationship? No. When we're talking about drugs and alcohol and consent, we're not super worried about the people who have healthy, safe relationships where there's communication. We're worried about those relationships that are new, the relationships where people are nervous. We're worried about situations at parties where people think it's funny to do something horrible to someone who's had too much to drink or who has passed out. That is what we're worried about. And the reality is, in any situation, including Matt's and mine, any situation where you are having sex with someone who's highly intoxicated, there is a 50% chance you are raping them, and you just won't know till the next day. So if in any situation where you're thinking to hook up and this person's really, really drunk, ask yourself the question of, tomorrow, do I want to face the fact that I might have an officer knocking on my door going, hey, we'd like to come in and ask you a few questions. That is the reality. Yeah. That's what we just talked about. Right. Well, here's the thing. Who started? That's the question. The initiator is the person who's in charge. So someone always initiates a sexual interaction. If I'm a person initiating a sexual interaction, I'm in charge of knowing if I have consent or not. And so sometimes people are like, well, what about if both people start the sexual interaction? And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? Like two people are just sitting there and then just boom, spontaneous sexual interaction? Doesn't happen. It's not a thing. Someone always initiates, and the person who initiates is responsible for knowing they have consent. Yep. So the idea that before you get drunk, you say, hey, you know, later, when we're having a party later, it's all good, like that type of thing. It's called pre-consent. There's no such thing. You cannot pre-consent to a sexual interaction. And the reason for that is because you own your consent. You can take it back at any time. So at any time during a sexual interaction, at any time, if you're like, wait, whoa, you know, slow down, gear down big rig, whatever it is that you need to say, just slow down and stop that interaction, and your partner does not listen to you, your partner ignores you, they pretend they didn't hear you, you have said no and they don't listen, it has now become sexual assault. So you own it. You own your consent. You can take it back anytime. So it makes pre-consent, it negates it. You can't have pre-consent if you can take it back at any time. So that makes sense? That answer your question? Yeah? Okay. So, drugs and alcohol. 50% chance that you're sexually assaulting someone. It's a pretty high risk to take. So if you're even just saying no in the situation to protect yourself, if you're looking at this situation and you're like, you know, this is a risky situation, I'm gonna say no to this because I don't wanna wind up in trouble, then that's a good enough reason to do it. Don't have sex with highly intoxicated or stoned people. It is just not worth the risk. Good? 2 thumbs up and a twirl? Let's see your thumbs. Amazing. So, when else can you not consent? Someone said age. What's the age of consent in Canada? Sorry? 16. So the age of consent in Canada is 16. So how many, oops, I did that right. How many of you in this room are under 16? Not very many, okay. It's interesting, because I'll tell you why. What this law means is that anyone under the age of 16 cannot say yes to any sexual activity whatsoever, even kissing. And any time that I say this to a room full of people who are under, and you can still just happen, amazing. Anytime that I say this to a room full of people who are under 16, this is what happens. You get 3 reactions. You get uncomfortable looking around, or you get this. Or you just flat out get, you know, people pointing out their friends going, dude, you're so under the age of 16. So, there are exceptions or caveats to this law. Under the age of 12 can never, ever, ever consent. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, right, because we don't want 10-year-olds having sex. But unfortunately, this law has to exist because in situations of childhood sexual abuse, if you ever read court transcripts, it's gone to court, it's in the justice system, and you read the court transcripts of a child sexual abuse case, you will see that the perpetrators try to blame the kid. They'll say stuff like, it was the kid's idea, the kid was sexually precocious, the kid was flirtatious, it was the kid's idea, I didn't know what to do. Just one second. So they will actually try to blame the child. And so this law says, yeah, no. This was a child. Children cannot make decisions about sexual activity. You are the grown-up or the adult or the older person in this situation, and so you're to blame, not the kid. Did you have a question? What's his name again? Justin, Ashton, Tyson, whatever his name is? No? Okay. So, 12 to 14 also cannot consent unless the other person is within 2 years. So say I'm 13 years old, my partner is 15. That's within 2 years. So that's an appropriate age difference. But if I'm 13 years old and my partner is 17, that is outside the 2-year age limit. It is too old. The 17-year-old is committing a crime called sexual interference with a child. So if you ever watch American television, you've maybe heard the term statutory rape. It's kind of the same thing, but in Canada we call it something different. 14 to 16 can also not consent unless the other person's within 5 years. So if I'm 15 and my partner is 17, that's a completely appropriate age difference. But if I'm 15 and my partner is 21, that's too old. It's outside the 5 years, it's too old. Once you're 16, the law states, hey, you know what? You're old enough to make decisions about who you have sex with, so good on you. Except for everyone under the age of 18, if the older person is in a position of trust or authority. So what that means is, say I'm 17 years old and my partner is 18. That's totally normal. It's a totally normal, completely normal age difference. But say that 18-year-old is my manager. Maybe I have a part-time job at Tim's and they're my manager at Tim Hortons. That makes the relationship illegal because I have to do what that manager says. They have control over me. They might get me in trouble at work. They might not give me shifts. They have a power. All relationships should look like this, and in that situation, it doesn't. And that's until you're 18. Once you're 18, you may then truly go out and knock boots with whomever you like. Once you're 18. Now the age of consent is two things, or not two things. The age of consent is not permission. So it's not, you're not supposed to go home to your parents, say some nice lady came up from Fredericton today and said I'm allowed to have sex now. Not what I just said. Age of consent is not permission. Age of consent is just looking at age appropriateness. It's not your family values, it's not your faith values, it's not your own personal values, it's just looking at age difference. The other thing that the age of consent is not about getting young people in trouble because they want to engage in sexuality. It's not saying, hey kids, you're really bad and horny, so let's put you in jail. It's not what it's saying. It's about protecting young people from creepy older people, is essentially what's going on, because the world is full of them, and this is one way that we can protect youth by managing age differences. Does that make sense? 2 thumbs up and twirl? Okay. So when are some other times that you cannot consent? There's a couple other ones that you cannot or you haven't given consent. Even if the word yes came out of your mouth, it doesn't count. That's what we were just talking about. Rape is a type of sexual contact without consent. So we're talking specifically about consent. Are you going to say a different type of sexual assault? Oh, fair. He said when you're sleeping. So if you're asleep or you are passed out, you can't give consent, right? Makes sense. You cannot give consent when you're sleeping or when you're passed out because consent, yes, is something that you hear. You know you have it. You've heard the words yes. You can never assume you have consent. If you are asked, if someone says to you, yeah, you totally had sex with that person, did you have consent? And you're like, I think so. Everything seemed okay. They didn't say no. You didn't have it. You know you had consent. They said the word yes. So when else? A few other times. Yep. Language barrier. Yeah. I don't think, it's not in the criminal code that you can't say yes to someone who doesn't understand your language, because there's always a way to kind of convey yes. 2 thumbs up, you could do this. I think smiling is a universal, it's kind of a weird way to give consent, but I think it would stand. I think there would be a way for 2 people who didn't understand each other's language to give consent. But good question, good comment. What else? A couple other times when you cannot or you have not, even though the word yes came out of your mouth, it doesn't count. Can you think of any? If I was to go home tonight and Matt said, if we don't have sex tonight, I'm going to hurt the kids. And I went, yep, okay, absolutely, no problem. Is that consent? No. But the word yes came out of my mouth. Someone just said it, I heard it, threatened. If you are threatened, it's called duress. If you are saying yes because you're afraid, if you are saying yes because someone has threatened to hurt you or someone else, and so you're only saying yes to protect yourself or someone else, it doesn't count. Duress does not count as consent. Consent is something that is happily given. It's wonderfully given. You cannot wait to say yes. You're so excited about it. It's never something that is fearful. It is never something that is given because you're afraid, so it doesn't count. These are the 3 big ones for your age group. When we talk about consent with youth, these are kind of the 3 big ones. There's one other one. If lies are used to obtain consent. So typically when I ask people, give me an example of a lie being used to obtain consent, people will say, oh, they lied about their marriage. And I'm like, wow, we'd have so many more people in jail. So no, not lying about being married. But there has to be an element of harm. So an example I can give you is, in St. John a couple of years ago, oh sorry, just wait, hang on. In St. John a couple of years ago, there was a couple who was estranged. They were breaking up. They were on again, off again, on again, off again. And the man in the relationship was trying to save the relationship. He wanted to stay together. So when they were back together one time, he intentionally tampered with the condom with the hopes of getting her pregnant, thinking that, well, if we're pregnant, we're having a baby, this will save our relationship. When she discovered she was pregnant, she reported him to the police because she thought she was consenting to situation A, and he knowingly exposed her to situation B. And because pregnancy is a risk, right? It's a risked person. There's health complications, there's health risks. Some people still die in childbirth. So he put her well-being and health at risk. And he was charged and found guilty of sexual assault because lies were used to get consent. What were you going to say way back there? You had your hand up. Lying about age is tricky because if someone, like the older person lying about being younger, that could get them into trouble, but they would be the one in trouble. But if you had a younger person who lied about being older, this is a tricky situation because the older person could still get in trouble because it's a responsibility to find out if you have consent. A lot of times when we think about sex, we think it's something that we're allowed to have. Like, I'm entitled to have sex. I can have sex if I want. It's up to me. Fair, yeah. But if you're having sex with another person, there's another person involved, and you have a responsibility to them. So having sex isn't just a given. It's not just a right. It's something that is a responsibility. So there are rules, and you have to figure out if the other person is old enough. And you have to kind of do your due diligence. So somebody who's saying, yeah, I'm totally old enough, yeah, it's fine, you might want to be spending a little more time with this person to figure out that they're not going to junior high, right? That they're not getting picked up like the school bus in the morning. These are things that are important pieces of information. So goes back to the idea of you're not just entitled to sex and hop in a sack with whomever. You've got to do some homework to make sure the person you're having sex with, you have consent. And if they're not old enough, don't have consent. So these are sort of the big ones, but when we talk about getting consent, this is the law, so great, now we know the law. How do you get consent? You ask for it. You ask for consent. You literally say, wanna have sex? You good to have sex? We're gonna have sex? You ask for consent. And a lot of times people will say to me, well, awkward. I'm like, yeah, that's the awkward part. That's the awkward part of sex, is asking, not the actual sex where you're trying to engage in this sort of cardiovascular activity where you're slamming your body into someone else's body and you're not sure what to do with your arm and they're laying on your hair and you get a hip cramp or you forgot to take your black socks off because nothing is as sexy as black socks left arm. Like, come on. How to get skinny jeans off. There's no attractive way that happens. You forgot to take your gum out, and then you're like, do I swallow my gum or do I spit my gum out? I don't know what to do here. I don't want my gum to fall in their mouth. So the whole kind of sexual interaction is actually the awkward part, and yet we're weirded out about making sure it's okay. That seems incredibly tragic and sad and strange to me. Because while sex is incredibly awkward, it's also fun and having a nice time and all the good stuff, but we have to make sure that the other person is happy as well. And so asking for consent should definitely not be the most awkward part. So we have to ask for it. We talked about pre-consent, the idea that you can't pre-consent, that you can take your consent back at any time. What are some other, and that you have to hear it. You have to actually hear the word yes. It's not enough to assume you have it, you have to hear it. What are some other things you think might have to happen in order to know that you're doing consent right? Can you think of anything? So say you're having sex with someone, and you have read an interesting novel. And you decide that you're gonna... I'm not signing that book title. It's the worst book written in the history of the world. Partially because the grammar is atrocious. But anyway, that's for English class. So you decide you're gonna throw in some new stuff, right? You're like, I'm gonna spice this up. I'm gonna throw in some new stuff, just a sec. And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna whip out this new sweet move. Can you do that without asking for your partner's permission? No, you cannot. You have to check in and ask for your partner's permission. You can't just be throwing in new stuff there and assuming it's okay. And again, people get really weird about this. They're like, awkward. And I'm like, okay, let's back up. We're not talking about chicken or go here. We're not like, can I touch you here? 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 I don't have to be foolish about it. All we're talking about is saying things like, is this okay? Are you comfortable? Do you want to try this thing? Is this something you feel okay about? Maybe, this is mind-boggling here, but just maybe, every so often, opening your eyes, looking at your partner, and making sure they're doing okay. Checking in to make sure that they're still having a good time. Simple, simple, simple things. So, we have to get permission. We have to get the yes. You can't pre-consent. You can't assume you have it. You have to check in with your partner throughout the interaction. Is silence consent? No. Silence is never consent. Just because someone didn't say anything doesn't mean that you're good to go. You have to know. Do you have to get consent every time? What if you've had sex with this person like 1,000 times? Do you have to get consent for the 1,001st time? Yes. You have to get consent each and every single time. Just because you've done it before does not mean you can just do whatever you want whenever you want. You have to keep getting the consent. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of responsibility. And again, a lot of times people get a little weird about that. And I'm like, well, friends, guess what? That's part of the responsibility. So, what is this word? What is this word? Everybody's like, they're all sounding it out. I can hear you. Coercion. Yes, it's coercion. So what is coercion? What does that mean to coerce someone? Persuade? Convince? Pressure? Blackmail? Flattery? Bribery? Bugging? Pleading? Basically, coercion is any time you're trying to get someone to do something they don't want to do. They have said no, and you're trying to change their mind. Now, the reality is we coerce each other all the time. Parenting is like 95% coercion. You have all coerced your parents at some point. I want to go to this thing. No. Please let me go to this thing. No. Please can I have this thing? No. Like, can I have the car? No. Can I have the car? No. That's coercion. Someone has said no, and you're trying to change their mind. But when we talk about coercion in a dating relationship, we're talking about an element of risk. We're talking about an element of harm. So lollipop people in the house? Who got the lollipop away from your partner? Away from their partner. Let's talk about those people first. Anybody? Oh, right there. What did you do? Oh, right. You were the mouth duo. Okay, who was your partner? Okay, I need that scenario explained because I wasn't watching. So, did you already have it in your mouth? No. He asked you if he could kiss you. He gave you consent. I know, I think this is what we're landing on here, people, is that in this scenario, we have consent, right? But for whatever reason, they weren't exchanging lollipops, they were actually exchanging spit, so I don't know about that. That's great. Love. There was all kinds of sexy time happening up on the stage. So yay for consent, round of applause. Okay, lollipop people. Who else got it away from their partner? Anyone else? What did you do? What did you bribe her with? Lots of things. I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to say lots of things. Fair. Let's assume that it was maybe other candy, like, oh, I have so much more candy back in my locker, share this with me, or give that to me and I'll give you some. Okay, so the things you were bribing her with, are you going to follow through and give her those things? Okay, so in this scenario, not only do we have bribery, but we also have lies. So 2 types of coercion. Who else got it? Yeah, what'd you do? So it was like, you're so beautiful, you're just so attractive. You were lying, she's not. Harsh. Whoever her partner was, you're beautiful and awesome and amazing. So complimenting, like, oh, you're so awesome, you're so great, you know, I love you so much, I'm so lucky to be with you. Oh. Okay, who else got it? Anybody else get it away from their partner? Anybody try something interesting and it just didn't work? So you were trying to grab it? With her mouth. I'm just gonna say that's sexual assault. Anybody else try something interesting and it just didn't work? Anybody? I don't know what's happening up there. We're gonna move on. In the group before you guys this morning, one kid paid $80 for it. And he actually had $80 cash. I was like, friend, this is a 5-cent lollipop, like inflation. And you know what, the other thing, I don't know if you guys in the audience noticed this, but I did. When I said, okay, go, the people trying to get the lollipop immediately stepped in really close to those people, and those people actually backed up. So it was like this kind of aggressive, like, I'm taking this thing from you type of behavior. Some of the more interesting ones I've heard over the years, if teachers have to participate because I have uneven numbers, teachers will promise better grades or detention. I've had kids offer presents and gifts and candy, but one kid in a class, I was standing near him, so I heard him. He was like, listen, when she's not looking, I'll grab all the lollipops. And then we'll just split them in the hall. And I was like, I can hear you, and also theft and coercion. Thank you very much. But the very best one that I've ever heard was from this kid in Harvey, who I was like, oh, don't touch your partner, blah, 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 go. And so this kid immediately was just like, oh, I don't feel very good. I'm really hot and I'm really dizzy. I have diabetes and I think I just need some sugar. And so I was like, are you all right? And he was like, yeah, because remember you said about getting a lollipop? I was like, I know, but do you have diabetes? And he's like, no, because remember about your directions? About getting a lollipop? And I was like, winner! So the reason that we talk about coercion is because in dating violence, we do see violence. Of course we see violence. Of course we see things like physical violence, sexual violence. But most dating violence starts here. Most dating violence starts with coercion. So, hopefully, statistically, or hopefully, you guys all land here, right? This is the heart. And you have happy and healthy relationships. Statistically, some of you are going to have some pretty unhealthy relationships. And how that looks is all of these little pushing things to get you to do something you're not ready to do. Or you don't even want to do ever. It's not even on your radar. You're like, no way. But they're trying to get you to do something you don't want to do. Now the hope is that if you're ever with someone who is coercing you, that you'll now recognize that, because coercion is a huge red flag. It's a relationship red flag. And that if you're dating someone who's coercing you, you'll have this kind of light bulb moment where you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is that friggin' lollipop activity, and you're trying to get my lollipop. And if you say that out loud, your partner might be like, well, I don't know what we're calling it, but we can call it a lollipop. But you'll be like, no, I get what's going on here. You are coercing me. Oh, I get it. And you will also know that this person is not worth your time. Because someone who coerces you doesn't really care about you. I met Matt in grade 7, and we started dating in grade 9, so I don't know how many years that is, but in that time, we've never, ever coerced each other. I would never want a situation where Matt is engaging with me in a sexual way because he feels like I've pushed him into it, or he feels pressured. That's awful. Or vice versa. So coercion is a sign that someone actually doesn't care about you. Not that they do and they just really want to be with you. So the hope is that you'll break up. Because unfortunately, if the coercion works, and sometimes it does, because we really care about them and we think, okay, I don't really want to do this, but if I do this, then everything will just settle down and go back to normal. Or maybe they have something on you. Maybe they have something scary. Maybe they're gonna make rumors about you and kind of ruin your reputation. Maybe they threaten to hurt you. Maybe there's some reason that the coercion works. And if it does, that person who's coercing you doesn't suddenly grow a moral compass. They don't suddenly become a better person. What they have now figured out is, it only takes this much to get what I want. So next time, I'm just gonna push a little harder. And this is very predictable behavior. We see this over and over and over again. Someone who would coerce you would hurt you. And the other scary thing is that the coercion just doesn't stop at coercion. What this person figures out is, you know what, wow, it sure does take a lot of effort to coerce this person. Presents or flattery or bugging or threats or what have you. I know I'm gonna get what I want, so I'm just going to take it. And right there you have sexual assault. This is called a continuum, and we see this behavior, this pattern, over and over again, all the time in my work. It's very predictable. So the idea that maybe you're dating someone, and you're just gonna stick it out, and you'll change their mind, and they wouldn't hurt you because they're such an awesome person, and if you're just good enough and kind enough and sweet enough, things will be okay, you're fooling yourself. They are showing you who they are. They are telling you loud and clear who they are, so believe them and break up. It is just not worth it. Does that make sense? Questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts around any of that? So questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts around any of that. So I'll go back to where I started at the very beginning. If you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I think this is actually going on right now with me. Or, you know what you're saying, I am recognizing that in a friend of mine. This is very familiar, what you're telling me. Then I want you to get some support. I want you to talk to someone. This is a scary thing. It can escalate quickly. It's not a joke. We have a 24-hour support line. This is what our calls are about. So often people think of sexual assault as something that's happening in a dark alley, and a stranger, and it's raining. These are not our calls. Our calls are people who are in this situation and they're scared and they're worried that it's going to escalate and they don't know how to get out. So get some support, guidance, first point of contact. Cannot stress it enough. Teacher that you trust, parent that you feel comfortable with, friend that you trust. And if you're the friend that person trusts and they have picked you, go with them. Say, you know what, friend? This is scary. This is a big deal. I am worried about you. Thank you for telling me. Let's go get some help. Let's go talk to someone. Because even though I'm so glad you chose me to tell, I don't really know what to do either. But I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure you have good resources. So be that really, really awesome, great friend and help them connect with better support. Good? 2 thumbs up and a twirl? It was so funny. Sorry. When I said, good, some of you went to clap, and then I said, 2 thumbs up and a twirl, and you were like, we don't know what to do. Adorable. It's okay to clap now. Go for it. I feel like I'm a little short on time. Am I good on time? Am I close on time? What time? About 10 minutes? Okay, so I'm sort of done. Unless you guys have questions, it's back to class. Back to class? Oh, sorry, not yet. Don't do anything I say about going back to class, because I'm not a teacher and I don't know what's going on.
Can I get you guys to introduce yourselves too?
We're just gonna sit here and stare at each other.
Do it.
Oh, do you have a question? Oh, sorry, go for it.
I wanted to ask you a long time ago, what if I got the permission from her,
Yes.
but after a while, something happened, something bad happened, they broke up, she got angry. Even though she gave me the permission, she would go and turn around or go and report to the police and
Right.
say something like, oh no, I don't give her permission, he raped me.
Right, yes. So just in case you didn't hear that, what he's talking about is the idea of false reporting, the idea of revenge reporting. So someone has given permission, and then later something bad happens, you break up or whatever, and then that person says, oh, you know what, I'm gonna get you back, and go to the police and say that you sexually assaulted me. So does that happen? Sometimes. It only happens in 3% of sexual assaults that are reported to the police, which is no higher than any other crime. So no higher than people going to the police and saying, my car got stolen, and really you ditched it in the woods and you're trying to collect insurance. So it doesn't happen any more than any other crime. What happens though is, if it happens, that gets so much media attention that people assume that anybody reporting sexual assault to the police is lying, which then prevents people from reporting to the police because they think nobody will believe me. If any of you were having policing families, you have police members in your families, you would know that the justice system is really difficult to report sexual assault. I wish the two officers were here from this morning. If I go to the police right now and I say, I've been sexually assaulted by this person, those officers don't go, oh my gosh, ma'am, okay, well, we're gonna go arrest them right away. That's not what happens. What happens is that I have to give a huge statement. They are going to ask me so many questions about what happened. Then they're going to gather evidence. They're going to talk to other people. They're going to see if there's any evidence whatsoever to support what I am trying to report. And then, only then, would they actually go talk to the person who's the suspect and maybe make an arrest. In Canada, when you get arrested, you don't necessarily get thrown in jail. It just means that you're brought in for questioning. You can be put in jail depending on the type of crime you've committed or you've been accused of. But most often with sexual assault, you're not put in jail. You're questioned and then you're released, and then the police do what's called building a file. They build a file that's got all the evidence, all of the witnesses, and if there was a sexual assault evidence kit, which is called a forensic evidence kit, where you go to the hospital and you do swabs and all that stuff. And they take that to the lawyers, the Crown. The Crown get to decide whether or not they believe a crime occurred and whether or not they will lay charges. Then the charges will be laid. And this process can take 6 to 8 months. And that's just getting it to the Crown. So, and then the whole justice system, I won't even go into that. But why I'm telling you this is, people have this idea that false reporting is just gonna get people in trouble super easily. It's not how our justice system works. Our justice system is set up that you are innocent until proven guilty. And so having someone accuse you of something is definitely not enough to get you in trouble and ruin your life. The process of the justice system is so difficult that false reports, they get dealt with so early. So it's not, we hear it a lot, but it's not something that happens very often. So did that answer your question?
yes.
Yeah, you weren't listening. But anyway. Yeah, I know, I'm just teasing you. Anyone else? Other questions? Just in case I don't see you and you're sitting there going like this.